Before Bill Murray became a Ghostbuster, he joined the Army, and things got completely bizarre. From surprise head shavings that made John Candy depressed to a 9-minute deleted acid trip in the South American jungle, this 1981 military comedy was far stranger behind the scenes than anyone imagined. Drunk actors, chipped teeth from unannounced stunts, and a completely different original cast reveal a production as chaotic as the film itself. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Stripes. Fact 1. Originally written for Cheech and Chong before Bill Murray ever put on an Army uniform, Stripes was supposed to be a completely different movie with a completely different cast. Director Ivan Reitman came up with the idea for the film while traveling to the premiere of his earlier comedy Meatballs in Toronto, Canada, sometime around 1979. He was thinking about making another service comedy, but this time one that would show the Army in a positive light, rather than as another Vietnam War protest film, which had been a Hollywood staple throughout the 1970s. His original pitch was simple and straightforward. Cheech and Chong joined the Army. At the time, Cheech Marin and Tommy Chong were riding high on the success of their stoner comedy Up in Smoke, which had been a surprise hit in 1978. Reitman enlisted screenwriters Len Blum and Dan Goldberg to write the screenplay specifically for the comedy duo, and they developed a script that would have fit perfectly with Cheech and Chong's laid-back, drug-fueled comedic style. The studio loved the idea, and their manager thought the script was hilarious. But there was a major problem. Cheech and Chong were busy cranking out their own movies at a rapid pace, with both Cheech and Chong's next movie and Nice Dreams releasing before Stripes would even go into production. More importantly, Tommy Chong, who directed their films, wanted complete creative control over any project they touched. According to reports, they also demanded a cut of Reitman's next 5 films, which was a deal the director simply couldn't accept. When the stoner duo walked away from the project, Reitman had to scramble for a replacement. Fortunately, he had already worked successfully with Bill Murray on Meatballs, and he knew Harold Ramis from his work co-writing National Lampoon's Animal House. Reitman suggested to Goldberg that they rewrite the 2 main characters to suit Murray and Ramis instead, figuring that if they could get Ramis interested enough to tailor the script for the pair, they could convince Murray to sign on. The strategy worked, and the rest became comedy history. Fact 2. Actors' heads shaved without warning. Director Ivan Reitman had a unique approach to capturing authentic reactions during the basic training haircut scene in Stripes, and it involved keeping a major secret from his cast. The actors playing recruits had no idea that real Army barbers were actually going to shave their heads completely bald until the moment cameras started rolling. Reitman lined up all the actors and shot the scene exactly as scripted, but the surprise was genuine. These weren't Hollywood barbers giving fake military cuts. They were actual Army barbers giving real recruit haircuts, shaving heads down to the barest stubble. According to Reitman's commentary on the DVD release, he deliberately withheld this information because he wanted to capture the actors' genuine shock and discomfort on camera. The strategy worked, but it also created some unexpected emotional moments on set. John Candy, who was already known for being self-conscious about his appearance, became visibly depressed after his head was completely shaved. The footage of Candy walking out of the barbershop, sadly picking up his fallen hair and looking genuinely upset, wasn't acting at all. It was his real reaction to losing his hair without any warning or mental preparation. Bill Murray and Harold Ramis, however, received special treatment because they were bigger names in Hollywood at that point in their careers. While the rest of the cast got their heads shaved completely down to stubble like actual Army recruits, Murray and Ramis were only required to cut their hair shorter, but not to shave their entire heads. This is why viewers who pay close attention can notice that their characters' hairstyles throughout the film are conspicuously longer and less regulation than what real Army recruits would be allowed to have during basic training. The visible difference in hair length between the stars and the supporting cast members became one of the film's minor continuity issues, though most audiences never noticed during the movie's theatrical run. Fact 3. Bill Murray hit himself for real. Sometimes the funniest moments in movies happen completely by accident, and that's exactly what occurred during one of the opening scenes in Stripes. In the film, Bill Murray plays John Winger, a down-on-his-luck cab driver who's having the worst day imaginable. He's already lost his job, his apartment, and his girlfriend, and the scene shows him driving a wealthy passenger to the airport while she complains about everything. As Murray's character loads her heavy suitcases into the trunk of the taxi, something unexpected happened that the cameras captured perfectly. According to director Ivan Reitman, who discussed the moment in the DVD commentary for Stripes, Bill Murray insisted that the production crew actually fill the suitcases with real weight so he could react authentically to lifting them. The team spent considerable time figuring out exactly how much weight should go into each bag to make the scene feel genuine. Murray wanted to make sure his physical performance looked realistic, which meant actually struggling with heavy luggage rather than pretending with empty props. This commitment to authenticity ended up creating one of the most memorable and painfully funny moments in the entire movie. As Murray lifted one of the weighted suitcases and swung it into the trunk, he genuinely struck himself in the crotch with the case. The impact was real, and his immediate reaction of pain was completely unscripted. Murray's line, "Oh my balls," wasn't written in the screenplay at all, but came directly from the actual pain he was experiencing in that moment. Reitman and the crew recognized immediately that Murray's authentic reaction was far funnier and more relatable than anything they could have planned or written. They kept the take in the final cut of the film, turning an on-set accident into one of the movie's most quotable lines. The moment perfectly captured the spirit of John Winger's terrible day, while also showcasing Murray's ability to turn even genuine misfortune into comedy gold. Fact 4. Warren Oates' tooth chipped in ambush. One of the most shocking moments during the filming of Stripes didn't happen in front of the camera by accident, but because director Ivan Reitman deliberately set up one of his actors without telling him what was about to happen. During the shooting of an obstacle course scene, Reitman secretly instructed the other actors to grab veteran actor Warren Oates, who played Sergeant Hulka, and physically drag him into the mud without any warning whatsoever. Reitman wanted to capture a completely genuine reaction from Oates, thinking it might create something funny and spontaneous for the film. What he got instead was a furious actor with a chipped tooth and a lesson he would never forget. When the cameras rolled and the other actors suddenly grabbed Oates and threw him down into the muddy obstacle course, the seasoned performer wasn't prepared for the impact. During the unexpected fall, Oates hit the ground hard enough that one of his front teeth got chipped. The pain was immediate, and once Reitman called cut, Oates was absolutely livid. He stormed up to the director and let him have it, making it crystal clear that what had just happened was completely unprofessional and dangerous. Oates told Reitman in no uncertain terms that he had been working in this business for a long time and considered himself a professional actor. He said that if the director wanted him thrown into the mud for a scene, that was perfectly fine, but Reitman needed to tell him first so he could prepare himself properly. The surprise ambush was unacceptable and disrespectful to someone with Oates' experience and dedication to his craft. After the confrontation, Oates initially insisted they could just film him from the other side of his face so production could continue, trying to power through despite his injury and the pain he was experiencing. Eventually, the crew convinced him to see a dentist to get the tooth properly looked at and treated. Reitman later admitted in interviews that this incident was one of the moments from the production he felt most embarrassed about. He acknowledged that Oates was absolutely right to call him out, and the director made a personal vow that he would never again use this kind of enforced method, acting surprise, in any of his future films. The lesson was learned the hard way, but it stuck with Reitman throughout the rest of his career. Fact 5. John Larroquette was actually drunk. When you watch the scene in Stripes where Captain Stillman furiously dresses down his entire company after they participated in the mud wrestling bar incident, you're witnessing something much more authentic than typical acting. John Larroquette, who played the uptight and perpetually frustrated Captain Stillman, later admitted in interviews that he was genuinely intoxicated during the filming of that particular scene. The actor confessed that he had been drinking before the cameras rolled, which added an extra layer of unpredictability to his performance as the exasperated commanding officer who was already at his wits' end with Bill Murray's platoon of misfits. The mud wrestling sequence itself was already one of the more outrageous moments in the film, featuring John Candy's character Ox and several other recruits getting into trouble at a local bar where they watched and participated in mud wrestling matches with scantily clad women. When military police and local authorities raided the establishment, most of the platoon ended up getting arrested and brought back to base, setting up the confrontation scene where Stillman completely loses his composure. Larroquette's decision to perform the scene while under the influence apparently helped him tap into the genuine frustration and barely controlled anger that his character would have felt dealing with these troublemaking soldiers who seemed determined to destroy his career and reputation. What makes this revelation particularly interesting is that Larroquette was already known as a talented dramatic actor who would go on to win multiple Emmy Awards for his work on the television series Night Court, which premiered just 3 years after Stripes was released in 1981. The fact that he felt the need to loosen himself up with alcohol for this comedic scene suggests he may have been searching for a way to make his character's fury feel more raw and unfiltered, rather than relying purely on scripted dialogue and rehearsed reactions. Fact 6. Larroquette's permanent nose. Scar. John Larroquette ended up with a permanent scar on his nose because of an on-set accident that happened during one of the most frantic scenes in Stripes. The actor was filming the moment when Captain Stillman discovers that the EM-50 urban assault vehicle has been stolen by Bill Murray and Harold Ramis's characters, and in his rush to react to the missing vehicle, Larroquette accidentally ran full speed into a glass door. The impact was so severe that he nearly sliced his nose completely off, and the injury required immediate medical attention to prevent even more serious damage. What makes this incident particularly notable is that the accident was serious enough to leave a visible scar that Larroquette still carries to this day, decades after the film wrapped. The production team had to scramble to figure out how to continue filming with their lead officer sporting a fresh facial injury, and makeup artists were brought in to carefully cover up the wound for all of Larroquette's remaining scenes in the movie. If you watch the film closely after this point in the production timeline, you might notice the strategic makeup work that was necessary to hide the damage, though the crew did an impressive job keeping it from being obvious to audiences. The door incident is just one example of the physical toll that making Stripes took on the cast, but unlike some of the other injuries that happened during filming, this one wasn't the result of any deliberate prank or surprise stunt orchestrated by director Ivan Reitman. It was simply a case of an actor getting so caught up in the energy of the scene that he didn't see the door in time to stop himself. Larroquette has spoken about the injury in interviews over the years, confirming that the scar remains visible and serves as a lasting reminder of his time making the 1981 comedy classic. Fact 7. The 9-minute LSD jungle scene. One of the strangest moments in Stripes never made it to theaters, and for good reason. The extended cut of the film includes a bizarre 9-minute deleted scene where John Winger and Russell Zisky accidentally take LSD, go AWOL from basic training, and end up parachuting into the jungles of South America. The sequence plays out like a fever dream that feels completely disconnected from the rest of the movie, which makes sense when you learn that it was a leftover from the original script written for Cheech and Chong. In the scene, Russell thinks he's taking Dramamine provided by Elmo, the platoon's resident drug user, played by Judge Reinhold, but it's actually 6 hits of acid. When John discovers what Russell has taken, he delivers the deadpan line, "Oh no, 6 hits, what a tragedy. You're going to be just fine in about 12 hours. You're going to be kinda weird until then." The two then board a plane for what they think is a routine training exercise, but they accidentally stow away on a Special Forces paratrooper mission. Things get even stranger when they parachute into a jungle somewhere in Central or South America, where they encounter Spanish-speaking guerrilla rebels. Bill Murray got stuck hanging upside down from his parachute during filming, which made him genuinely sick and angry, according to director Ivan Reitman. The rebels capture them and nearly execute them, but Winger saves the day by spontaneously singing the chorus of Cuando, 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 the Tito Rodriguez song, which somehow wins over their captors. The rebels even share marijuana and more LSD with them before the two manage to sneak away and rejoin the Special Forces unit as it's boarding the plane back to base. The entire sequence was filmed on the backlot of the Burbank Warner Brothers studio and featured what Reitman described as every Mexican actor hanging out at the place. Even though Columbia Pictures executives loved the scene, Reitman and producer Dan Goldberg could never figure out where to place it in the film. As Reitman explained, "You end up in the same place with the characters when the scene is done, so we didn't need it. Tonally, it didn't fit." The scene remains one of the most surreal deleted sequences in comedy film history. Fact 8. Dennis Quaid auditioned for Harold Ramis's role. The casting of Stripes almost looked completely different, and it came down to one person's loyalty to an old friend. Dennis Quaid, who was married to co-star P.J. Souls at the time, actually read for the role of Russell Ziske, the straight-laced teacher who gets dragged into joining the Army alongside Bill Murray's character. Quaid was a rising star in Hollywood, and on paper he seemed like a solid choice for the part. But there was one major problem standing in the way of him getting the role, and that problem was Bill Murray's unwavering friendship with Harold Ramis. Harold Ramis had already made a name for himself as a brilliant comedy writer, having co-written National Lampoon's Animal House, Meatballs, and Caddyshack. But when it came to acting, he was relatively unknown in the film world. His most notable acting work had been on the late-night sketch comedy show Second City Television, which he had actually quit a few years before Stripes came around. When director Ivan Reitman approached Ramis about rewriting the script for Murray and taking on the role of Russell, Ramis was hesitant. He was far more comfortable behind the scenes as a writer than he was in front of the camera, and he knew the studio wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea of casting him. Columbia Pictures made their feelings clear when Ramis auditioned for the part. They absolutely hated his audition. The studio executives didn't think he had the screen presence or the acting chops to carry a major role opposite their star, Bill Murray. They wanted someone else, someone more proven as an actor, which is why Dennis Quaid's name came up in the first place. But Reitman had a different problem on his hands. Bill Murray flat out refused to do the movie without Harold Ramis. Murray had worked with Ramis before, and their chemistry was undeniable. He trusted Ramis not just as a writer, but as a comedic partner who understood his style of improvisation and could match his energy on screen. Murray told Reitman in no uncertain terms that if Ramis wasn't cast as Russell, he would walk away from the entire project. Reitman found himself in a tough spot, caught between the studio's demands and his star's ultimatum. In the end, Reitman sided with Murray and told Columbia Pictures that he was hiring Harold Ramis, regardless of their opinion. It turned out to be one of the best decisions of the entire production, as the chemistry between Murray and Ramis became one of the film's greatest strengths. Fact 9. Columbia wanted to cut key scene. When Columbia Pictures executives first watched the rough cut of Stripes, they had a serious problem with one particular scene, and they wanted director Ivan Reitman to remove it entirely from the film. The scene in question was the intense confrontation between Sergeant Hulka and John Winger that takes place in the barracks latrine, where the two characters have a serious, dramatic face-off that's completely different from the light-hearted comedy tone of the rest of the movie. The studio felt that this moment was far too serious and heavy for what was supposed to be a fun, anarchic military comedy, and they worried that audiences would be thrown off by the sudden shift in tone. They argued that people coming to see Bill Murray be funny didn't want to watch him in a tense, dramatic scene where he's genuinely challenged by his drill sergeant. But Reitman absolutely refused to cut the scene, and he had very specific reasons for fighting to keep it in the film. The director understood that the movie needed what he called a little bit of weight in the center to give the story some real stakes and to make Sergeant Hulka feel like a legitimate authority figure rather than just another comedic foil for Murray's wisecracks. More importantly, Reitman saw this as a crucial opportunity for Bill Murray as an actor. Up until that point in his career, Murray had been known exclusively for comedy, whether on Saturday Night Live or in his previous film roles. This latrine scene would be Murray's first chance to do serious, dramatic acting on film, and Reitman believed it was essential for showing Murray's range and depth as a performer. The scene also served an important narrative purpose by establishing real consequences and genuine respect between the two characters. When Hulka invites Winger to take a swing at him and then floors him with a single punch to the gut, it's not played for laughs at all. It's a moment that forces both Winger and the audience to recognize that beneath all the comedy and chaos, there are real rules and real authority that can't just be joked away. Fact 10. Bill Paxton's uncredited early role. If you watch Stripes closely, you might spot a young Bill Paxton among the recruits, though he has no speaking lines and appears only as background talent in the barracks and training scenes. This was 1981, years before Paxton would become a household name for his memorable performances in films like Aliens, The Terminator, and Twister. At the time of filming, Paxton was just 26 years old and scrambling for any work he could get in Hollywood, taking small roles wherever they were available. His appearance in Stripes was so minor that he didn't even receive an on-screen credit, listed only as Soldier in the production notes. In a 2017 interview with Yahoo that covered his entire career, Paxton discussed his brief time on the Stripes set and specifically mentioned working in the mud wrestling scene, though his role was purely as an extra, watching the chaos unfold. Despite having no dialogue and minimal screen time, being part of such a successful comedy gave the young actor valuable experience and a credit he could add to his growing resume. What makes this even more interesting is that Stripes served as a launching pad for numerous future stars who were in similar positions at the time. Judge Reinhold, who played the drug-loving recruit Elmo, went on to star in Fast Times at Ridgemont High and the Beverly Hills Cop franchise. Timothy Busfield, credited as the soldier with the mortar, later became famous for his role in the television series 30-something and as the pitcher in Field of Dreams. Even Dennis Quaid made an uncredited appearance at the graduation ceremony, though he was there primarily to watch his then-wife, P.J. Soles, perform. The film essentially functioned as an incubator for comedic and dramatic talent, giving these actors early exposure in a project that would gross over $85 million and become a beloved 80s classic. For Paxton, it was one small step in what would become a remarkable 4-decade career in Hollywood before his unexpected death in 2017. Fact 11. Steadicam breakthrough technology. One of the most memorable moments in Stripes is the graduation parade scene, where Bill Murray's ragtag platoon shows up an hour late and performs an absolutely wild drill routine that somehow impresses the generals. What most people don't realize is that this iconic sequence was also a major technical achievement for cinema, thanks to groundbreaking camera technology that was still brand new at the time. The scene was filmed using a Steadicam, and the actual inventor of the device, Garrett Brown, was on set supervising its use, even though he wasn't credited in the film. Director Ivan Reitman later said he believed Stripes was only the second movie after Rocky to use this revolutionary technology, though a few other films like Bound for Glory and Marathon Man had also experimented with it in 1976. The point is, in 1981, when Stripes was being made, filmmakers were still figuring out what this new tool could do. Before the Steadicam came along, getting smooth-moving shots was incredibly complicated and expensive. Camera operators had to lay down tracks on the ground, which took forever to set up and limited where they could shoot. The Steadicam changed everything by using a special mount that isolated the camera from the operator's movement, allowing for fluid shots even when the camera person was running over rough terrain or moving quickly through a crowd. For the graduation scene, Reitman fell in love with how the Steadicam captured the natural power and energy of the platoon, running to the parade ground. The entire sequence was shot in just one take because they had run out of filming time, and the Steadicam's ability to follow the action smoothly made it work perfectly. The technology gave the scene a dynamic, almost documentary-like quality that made the chaos feel real and immediate, helping turn what could have been a standard comedy moment into one of the most quotable and beloved scenes in 1980s comedy history. Fact 12. Sean Young and Bill Murray feuded behind the scenes of Stripes. Not everyone got along as well as their characters did on screen. Sean Young, who played military police officer Louise Cooper, and Bill Murray reportedly had a difficult working relationship during filming in 1981. The tension between them came down to fundamentally different approaches to acting, and the clash was significant enough that it apparently left a lasting impression on both performers. Young was trained in a more traditional, structured acting style, where she preferred to stick closely to the script and prepare her performance in advance. Murray, on the other hand, was known for his improvisational comedy background from Saturday Night Live and Second City, often throwing out the written dialogue and coming up with new lines on the spot. This spontaneous approach worked brilliantly for Murray and created some of the film's most memorable moments, but it reportedly frustrated Young, who found it difficult to react naturally when she didn't know what Murray was going to say or do next. The improvisational style that made Murray such a beloved comedic talent was exactly what made their scenes together challenging. Young needed structure and predictability to deliver her best performance, while Murray thrived on chaos and spontaneity. Director Ivan Reitman actually encouraged Murray's improvisations throughout the film, which likely made the situation even more uncomfortable for Young, who may have felt she wasn't being given the same opportunity to prepare properly for her scenes. According to reports from the production, the friction between them was noticeable enough that Murray allegedly made a private vow never to work with Sean Young again after Stripes wrapped. While both actors went on to successful careers, with Young starring in Blade Runner just 1 year later and Murray becoming one of Hollywood's biggest comedy stars, they never appeared in another film together. The feud remains one of the lesser-known conflicts from the production of this otherwise beloved comedy, showing that even on a fun military comedy set, not everyone was laughing behind the scenes. Fact 13. Czechoslovakia was a Kentucky distillery. If you watch Stripes carefully, you'll notice that the climactic rescue mission supposedly takes place deep behind the Iron Curtain in Czechoslovakia. But every single one of those tense Eastern Bloc scenes was actually filmed at an abandoned whiskey distillery in rural Kentucky. The Chapez Distillery in Claremont, Kentucky, which was owned by the Jim Beam Company, stood in for the Soviet-controlled military compound where the platoon gets captured, and the transformation was so convincing that audiences never questioned it. Director Ivan Reitman chose this location for reasons that went far deeper than just budget considerations or convenience, as his personal family history was intimately connected to the country his film pretended to invade. Reitman's family were Czech refugees who had fled Czechoslovakia, and according to co-writer Harold Ramis, this personal connection influenced the decision to set the film's third act in that specific country rather than in generic Cold War Eastern Europe or Russia. By filming at the Jim Beam Distillery, the production could recreate the look of a militarized communist outpost without ever leaving the United States. And the facility's industrial architecture, with its aging brick buildings and sprawling grounds, provided the perfect backdrop for what was supposed to be a dangerous enemy stronghold. The location also kept the production close to Fort Knox, where most of the earlier Army training sequences had been shot, making it logistically simpler to move equipment and crew between filming sites. The distillery had been closed down, which meant the production team had complete freedom to modify the location as needed without disrupting any ongoing operations. They could add Soviet-style guard towers, military vehicles, and other Cold War props to transform the bourbon-making facility into a convincing communist military installation. The irony of using an iconic American whiskey producer's property to represent the enemy during the Cold War era wasn't lost on the filmmakers, but the location worked so effectively that viewers watching the finished film had no idea they were actually looking at Kentucky bourbon country dressed up as Czechoslovakia. Fact 14. Warren Oates died less than a year later. The beloved drill sergeant who kept Bill Murray's ragtag platoon in line wouldn't live to see the full impact of his performance. Warren Oates, who played the tough but fair Sergeant Hulka in Stripes, died of a heart attack on April 3, 1982, at just 53 years old. This tragedy occurred less than 10 months after the film's premiere in June of 1981, making Stripes one of the final memorable roles in a career filled with iconic performances. Oates brought genuine gravitas to the role of Sergeant Hulka, grounding the comedy with his authentic military bearing and perfect comedic timing. Director Ivan Reitman specifically chose Oates because he wanted someone with real strength and presence who could control the film's chaotic ensemble cast. Before landing this role, Oates had become a legendary character actor throughout the 1960s and 70s, appearing in classics like In the Heat of the Night, The Wild Bunch, Two-Lane Blacktop, Badlands, and Dillinger. His background as a real United States Marine Corps veteran who served from 1946 to 1948 added authenticity to his portrayal of the no-nonsense drill instructor. What made Oates' performance so memorable was his ability to deliver menace with a straight face while clearly being in on the joke. His delivery of the now classic line, "Lighten up, Francis," became one of the most quoted moments from the entire film, showcasing his impeccable timing. Judge Reinhold later recalled that during filming, Oates would tell fascinating stories about working on legendary westerns like The Wild Bunch, and the younger cast members were completely enthralled by his experiences and professionalism. After completing Stripes, Oates worked at his usual furious pace and managed to complete 3 more films before his sudden death. His loss was felt deeply throughout Hollywood, as he had been one of the most reliable and talented character actors of his generation, bringing depth and credibility to every role he touched. Fact 15. The Aunt Jemima treatment was improvised. One of the most memorable and risque scenes in Stripes happened almost entirely by accident, filmed in the middle of the night when everyone was exhausted. The kitchen scene where Bill Murray's character John Winger and P.J. Soles' character Stella sneak into the base commander's house wasn't carefully choreographed or meticulously planned. Instead, it was shot at 3 o'clock in the morning after the cast and crew had already been working for an entire day, and what ended up on screen was almost completely made up on the spot by Murray himself. According to director Ivan Reitman, the long day of filming had left everyone tired, but they still needed to capture this intimate scene between the 2 characters. Rather than follow a strict script, Reitman gave Murray the freedom to improvise, which the actor took full advantage of. The now infamous moment where Murray uses kitchen utensils in unexpected ways while performing what he calls the Aunt Jemima treatment was completely unscripted. P.J. Soles had no idea what Murray was going to do or say during the scene, so her reactions throughout the entire sequence are genuine responses to whatever he decided to try in the moment. This approach was typical of how Stripes was filmed. Murray and Harold Ramis improvised heavily throughout the production, and Reitman encouraged this spontaneous style of comedy. The kitchen scene became one of the film's most talked-about moments, precisely because of its unpredictable, improvisational nature. Soles later confirmed that she simply had to react naturally to Murray's antics as they happened, making the chemistry between the 2 characters feel authentic and unforced. The exhaustion of filming at such a late hour after a full day of work actually added to the scene's relaxed, playful atmosphere. What could have been a disaster turned into one of the movie's most memorable sequences, showcasing Murray's comedic instincts and his ability to create something entertaining even when running on empty. The scene perfectly captures the irreverent, spontaneous spirit that made Stripes such a beloved comedy of the 1980s.